This presentation is on three bright constellations, Orion, Taurus, and Canis Major. I think Orion has more bright stars than any other constellation. And then Canis Major includes the brightest star in the night sky. So these ones are good wintertime constellations. Here's the part of the sky. As with all of these things, you should probably watch these things in a darkened room, but you can see lots of bright stars in here. Some of you may know the constellation of Orion. It's one that for many people is very recognizable. And I don't always trace out the arms pointing out from there. I think in the arm that's headed off to the right there, that would be Orion's left arm. He's supposedly holding a fox or something like that. And in his left arm, or right arm, which is on your left, would be a club. But sometimes I just do the rest of it and don't include the arms. Up here is Taurus. It's supposedly a bull. You have to be fairly imaginative. It's kind of just the head of the bull with some long horns on it, but it's just a big V is all that I look for here. And in this same part of the sky is Gemini, so just to the left of Orion there. So many bright things in this part of the sky, and we'll look at some other bright constellations here as well. In Taurus, the one bright star that you need to know the name of is Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. So it's there, fairly recognizable. It stands out more in the night sky than it does on these slides. On the slides it's fairly equal in brightness to some of the other stars in there, but Aldebaran really does stand out in the night sky more than that. Down in Orion we have Betelgeuse, which the next star over to learn in this one is Bellatrix, and that's a word that means warrior princess. And I had a student one fall who named her baby horse Bellatrix. Rigel is down here. And then here is the constellation, or the star Safe. Okay, here's a little different view of this part of the sky. And this time I left the arms off of Orion, as I usually do. And then Taurus up there. And there is Canis Major, our other constellation for this week. Canis Major is a bit south. It doesn't get very high in our sky from our latitude. So Orion does. Actually, the belt of Orion, right across the middle of it there, those three stars in a row, those are just about on the celestial equator. So they get about 43 degrees above our southern horizon, which is halfway up to the overhead point. So that's pretty high, but Canis Major is farther south, so it never gets all that high. And Sirius is the bright star in Canis Major. That is the brightest star in the night sky, and it's got a magnitude of about -1.7. Up in this part of the sky is not a constellation you need to learn this week, but it's Canis Minor, and seeing that constellation you kind of know why the other constellation is Canis Major, even though it looks like a dachshund down there. But Canis Minor is up there. It has a bright star in it named Procyon. Over in Taurus here we've got Aldebaran. And then all those stars in Orion to name: Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, Rigel, and Safe. These three stars form what are called the winter triangle, and they do stand out more in the actual night sky. And so if you trace them out, it's just about a perfect equilateral triangle, or at least it looks that way to the naked eye. And that's the winter triangle, high overhead on winter nights. So even though it's cold out, try to get outside and enjoy some of these stars and constellations in the winter. Okay, back to Orion here. Orion's belt there. And you can use Orion's belt as a pointer. And if you head to the right from Orion with the belt, it points more or less at Aldebaran. You have to do a little bit of a curve, but it'll point up there. And Aldebaran really is brighter than those stars that it's in the midst of, so it will stand out more in the night sky. And then go the opposite direction, and in an almost straight line it points at Sirius. So that's a way you can use that to find other things in the sky. Okay, this will point up some other constellations in this part of the sky here. There's Taurus, and then down below it to the right is Orion, most of it. We don't see safe in this picture, but we can see most of the rest of it. And then connected to Taurus is Auriga, and those dashed lines in Auriga, in the asterism there, are because that star that they connect to is actually in Taurus, but just barely. The border between Auriga and Taurus passes just to the left of that star, and so it's shared in the asterisms for the two. And then up here is Perseus, and there is the Pleiades star cluster, which is within the constellation of Taurus. Here's a picture that was the astronomy picture of the day, one day in April 2020, and that April Venus happened to pass through the stars of the Pleiades for about 5 days there. You could look up here with a pair of binoculars. By the way, the Pleiades are a great binocular object, almost no matter what the power of the binoculars is. There they are. The Pleiades is an open star cluster, not a globular star cluster. A couple of deep sky objects in this part of the sky. There are many, but I'll just point out a couple of them to you. This one up here in Taurus is M1, that's Messier Object 1, and it was the first Messier object on his list, things not to be confused with comets. Now, the picture I'm about to show you of it is very spectacular. You wouldn't confuse it with a comet, but this is a Hubble Space Telescope picture, and Charles Messier did not have the Hubble Space Telescope. He was looking through a small refracting telescope when he was naming these things. This is a supernova remnant, and interesting thing, this supernova became visible in the sky in 1054 AD. We know of it, that it became visible then from Chinese and Japanese astrologers who made a note of it. It was bright enough to be seen in the daytime sky for months, and there doesn't seem to be any written record of it in Europe at the time. This was the Dark Ages in Europe, and whatever people were noticing it, they weren't writing it down and recording it in books. So kind of an interesting thing, but it's a spectacular object when you can take a long time exposure picture of it. But it's neat to look at just through a regular telescope too. And then also in this part of the sky in Orion, if you look at coming down from the belt, if you think of that as Orion's sword, the bottom star on it, even to the naked eye, will look a little bit fuzzy. And just through a pair of binoculars, you can see the nebulosity there. That's the Orion Nebula. And I often look at that on winter mornings. I get up pretty early, and if it's a nice clear winter morning, I'll just go out on my patio, which faces south, and hold up my binoculars and look at the Orion Nebula there. I don't know that I've ever tried to track down M1 with my binoculars or not, but M42 is a nice binocular object. And here's a picture of it. So you see many different pictures of the Orion Nebula, and it's a star-forming region is what it happens to be, a large cloud of gas and dust. And the new stars that form give off a lot of light, and that's what lights up the nebula. The pinkish color that you see in there is due to hydrogen, which is excited, and just like looking at excited hydrogens in the classroom, in the glass tube, the hydrogen out in space glows with a pink color as well. The different colors you see will, or the different pictures you see will emphasize different colors. A lot of times they're kind of false color images too, which this one may be, but that's why the Orion Nebula looks different in almost every picture you see of it. Well, that's it for this batch of constellations, and learn those stars. You have Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, Rigel, and Saiph in Orion, and then Sirius in Canis Major, and Aldebaran in Taurus.